Michael Burgess from Texas. He's a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And welcome to the show, Representative Burgess.
Well, John, it's great to be on with you.
It's great to have you with us. The EPA claims they have the authority to enforce the regulations against greenhouse gas emissions because of a 2007 Supreme Court case where the case ruled that carbon dioxide and other gases were air pollutants and subject to the Clean Air Act. I'm assuming you don't agree with that case.
Well, I think what the Supreme Court told EPA in 2007 was that they needed to make a decision based on science. Now, the court case that's going today becomes a little more technical, and the question is, does the EPA now have to reveal the science upon which it made the decision? And this has been an ongoing fight really since the very first days of the Obama administration. Under the Bush administration, the EPA said that they were not going to decide. They were sued by some Northeast states, and that which led to the first Supreme Court decision. Lisa Jackson, when she was in her confirmation hearings back in 2009, this was one of the things that she said she was going to do. So it's certainly not a great surprise, but at the same time, man, it could be disruptive.
Yeah, and let's talk about the ways that it could be disruptive. And one of those issues is what it would do to the average American and their power bills at home. What do you think the result would be to energy prices?
Well, they're going to go if the EPA is successful, prices will go way up. And this is not a secret. I mean, even when President Obama was a candidate, he said energy prices are going to necessarily skyrocket. So that's what he's had in mind all along. And bear in mind, in the very early days of the Obama administration, in our committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, we heard we had hearings and then ultimately a markup on a bill that was called Waxman-Markey. This was the climate change bill that the Democrats so desperately wanted to pass in the early days of President Obama's first term. It did pass the House on a fairly narrow margin. The Senate lost their nerve and never took it up because they saw how desperately unpopular it was. And the reason it was unpopular was because of the cost it was going to impose on just average, everyday consumers. You want to talk about a war on the middle class? You double or triple electricity rates in Texas in the summer and see if the middle class doesn't feel it.
And so what could Congress do to step in here to make sure that these new regulations don't go into effect?
Well, in spite of the president's assertion to the contrary, the legislative branch actually does still have the power of legislating, and these regulations have come about through rulemaking, through authority that the EPA has assumed that it has. We could remove that assumption of authority. We could, in fact, legislate that the authority that the EPA has is much more narrow and much more tailored. Because let's be honest, if they are successful, there is no product, there is no service that is beyond the scope of the EPA interfering in that business, because each of us produces half a ton of carbon dioxide. That's each and every individual human produces half a ton of carbon dioxide every year. So the EPA could literally regulate us throughout the course of just what we do during the day, how much we talk, for example.
That's a scenario that seems like it would be impossible to see in place, but not that far-fetched to hear you say it, though. And while we have you here, Congress, I wanted to also talk to you a little bit about Obamacare. I also want to bring in Newsmax senior editor David Patton, who we have with us still on set. Many state governors from both parties are now saying that the President's Health Care Reform Act is here to stay, and if there were to be a full repeal, it would be complicated and messy, if not impossible. Do you believe that, and do you think Republicans should still push for a full repeal?
Well, let's look at the way forward, whether it be repeal or whether it be here to stay. The way forward is messy and chaotic because of the president's health care takeover. If you just simply say, okay, all efforts to try to change anything are now suspended and we just go forward, they're making it up as they go along. The administration, they don't know how to implement what they've passed. Witness the fact that, Republicans have taken away 7 pieces of Obamacare, but the president himself has set aside some 25 or 30 parts of the Affordable Care Act on his own. The problem is that just the implementation of what is already written is nigh impossible. So Will there be changes going forward? You bet there will. Will some of those, will some of them be hard on states or individuals? I don't know. I think the goal should be from all of us on the legislating side that we try to minimize the impact, the deleterious impact it's going to have on people.
David, we're going to bring in Congressman. We'll bring in David Patton real quick, who wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah, Congressman, actually I wanted to ask you a question that touches both on Obamacare and on the energy situation. In the recent announcement of the Republicans' platform for the 2014 elections, they mentioned a number of items, and one of them was heating oil cost, heating and energy, that they want to bring those costs down. But politically speaking, is that really a wise strategy? I thought all the focus was going to be on Obamacare. Can House policies really lower the price of heating oil for folks, which has gone way up? And is that really a political winner? It seems a little bit like perhaps small ball.
Well, you're talking to a member of Congress from Texas, which is a natural gas producing state. So I don't know if I'm the very best person to ask that question. Sure, there are things that you can do as far as lightening the regulatory touch that would allow companies to then in turn be able to sell their product at less cost. But to your comments about should this be the central part of the Republican theme going forward, I think you may have hit upon something. We may want to focus our energies in other ways.
All right, Congressman, we'll have to lead the discussion there. Of course, there's always more to talk about with Obamacare, so we'll have you back hopefully in the near future to discuss that as well. Congressman Burgess is always great and making himself available to talk to us. Thank you very much, Congressman. We'll have much more coming up later in the show.